I bought its 314 reactor here, and today we're going to be looking at some Escape from Tarkov because they've added DLSS into it at last. This is quite a heavy game to run when you really crank everything up, even with a RTX 3090. So I want to see what it's like. First of all, we're going to test it with TAA high, colored very high, HBAO, SSR on ultra, and tropic filtering on. NVIDIA reflex low latency on. We've got high quality color, Z blur, chromatic aberration, noise, grass shadows, map streaming, and flash indicator. These are probably things people might want to turn off for normal gameplay, but I'm going to leave them on because we're just testing how fast this will run. We're also going to turn on the frame rate. So you go into the console, then FPS 2. There's different levels of what we can show off on the FPS actually. So if we go to here and do an FPS 3, we get a lot more information. Okay, so we're gonna stick with that. So the main ones are going to be interesting there, FPS and the frame times. VSync's on. Okay, NVIDIA reflex is what's not last time. So we want to turn off VSync so we can get the absolute maxed frame rate. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into new jeans and boots. I've not seen those before. We're going to go into offline mode. We're going to go into customs during the day. Offline mode. I'm running this with a Core i7-6700K and an RTX 3090. The CPU is a bit old, but with the graphics level we're running at, it should be predominantly GPU bound. So we're running at 54 frames here. The limit is 120 frames. As you can see, there's quite a bit of weirdness there with the fence. You want to keep an eye on that when DLSS is on. A bit shimmering and stuff like that. I mean, the image quality is fine, but it suffers from the usual things that TAA suffers from. You can see a kind of loss of detail on those power lines as they disappear into the distance. The grass doesn't look so hot with it. I found that DLSS beats pretty much any other anti-aliasing technique. And what you're seeing up there in the roof, this is something I want to keep an eye on. Hopefully it comes through in the video. Is you're seeing some shimmering there because you're getting like sub-pixel shimmering, and then I think the film grain over the top of that is accentuating it. So that's something else to see if DLSS cleans up. So just from this area here, 57 frames a second. You can see the trees in the background there. Pretty standard stuff for TAA and with the post effects on top. So let's turn DLSS on to quality. Whoa, okay. Instantaneously, that looks way better. See, that shimmering is gone in that top window bit. Everything looks way sharper, and we're running at 96 frames. So that is like 40 plus frames. That's awesome. And look, the shimmering's gone. The vegetation looks clearer. The whole image looks beautiful now. Oh god, that looks really nice. Really nice. So that's the setting I would use, quality. But obviously if you want a bit more performance, you might want to go with balanced or performance mode. Or if you're trying to run an 8K ultra performance. So let's flick it over to balanced mode and see what it looks like. That still looks really nice. I mean, for your average player that's not going to look too close, that looks really nice. And definitely looks better than TAA. And that's given us, what, an extra 15, 20 frames a second there? 110 frames now. So I reckon if we flick to performance, we're going to hit 120. So let's flick that over to performance now. 120. There we go. So the VSync's off, but we're not going past 120 frames there. That's interesting. Maybe there's just a hard limit to the internal frame rate. But yeah, we're basically maxing out there. 120 frames a second. The frame render time about 8.4. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that still looks really good. Really good quality. I think they've improved performance mode because it used to look a bit janky, but that looks still really nice. I think you can see a bit of blur on that pole on the side there and a little less detail in some of the things, but still all the shimmering's gone from that roof and everything else looks smooth as hell, and it still looks like you're downsampling from like 8K or something. So let's try ultra performance mode now. So at this point we're again hitting that 120 frame rate limit. The frame time still seems to be jumping by about 0.05 milliseconds, so I think that's just normal. You can see here the image quality has taken a bit of a dip, but there's a bit of shimmering on that roof, but still not as much as there was with TAA. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to flick it back to quality mode. My word, that looks nice. Oh, that frame rate. Oh, that is the first time I've had Tarkov running in 4K with all the settings maxed out looking this good. So to put DLSS on and have those settings still super high and be getting like 100 frames a second and it looks better, yeah, that's That's awesome. I imagine they're going to introduce ray tracing at some point. Wow, yeah, look at the grass. Like, really nice. Let's go back and check that chain link fence to see what the shimmering is like. I mean, the game also supports auto HDR now, so if you've got Windows 11 and an HDR monitor and a compatible graphics card, you're set. Like, this will look so amazing. So let's check it out. So we remember that this chain link fence was... Wow, that's much cleaner. So you can see there, look, as we go close, we go close. And we go far away. Little tiny bit of shimmering bit going on, but not too much. Still looks pretty solid, pretty clean. Let's flick over to DLSS off. Oh yeah. Lots of shimmering, lots of detail loss. Even relatively up close. Like, you can see parts of the chain link fence disappearing, shimmering happening, all sorts. Let me just turn DLSS back on. Look at that. Look at that. Those missing bits of the chain link fence are back. And that's internally rendering at a lower resolution and reconstructing that image. It's giving a better quality and more stability in that image of that chain link fence than running it natively at 4K. And again, like I say with every game with DLSS, it looks like you're doing super sampling. But of course, if you super sampled this game, which we can do right now, so we're running quality DLSS, running 97 frames a second, we can super sample this bad boy, probably get approximately the same image quality, but we'll see the frame rate hit. So let's do that now. And you see the frame rate is 30 frames. And I think that looks worse than DLSS. Oof, that's nasty. So let's do a direct comparison. This is 2x super sampling, so internally rendering 8K, I think. Let's go back to quality DLSS. So that's like almost, that's over 3 times the frame rate for what I think is better image quality. And let's flick over to 4x super sampling, which I think would be internally rendering at 16K. Wow. 16 frames a second. Looks marginally better than 2x super sampling. But again, it's half the frame rate. And I think there's probably some more detail on the front post of the M4 there. Slightly more texture detail coming through. But you're still getting some shimmering. And even if you were getting any IQ gains over DLSS there, you're losing like 90% FPS for that. And let's go back to quality DLSS. The only thing I've noted is, yeah, the details on the front post and on the gun, some of the textures there looked a little bit sharper and like a bit more detail was coming through with the 4x super sampling. So we're going to find a bit more of a foliage sort of area. Okay, so these trees will do. Let's go back to DLSS off. Yeah, it just looks a bit blurry. It's where a TAA, or any AA, seems to fall apart is foliage. Especially when it gets into the distance there. And then back on. You do get some smearing there. And it often happens with birds and things in the distance. There's a bit of smearing. But for the most part, the sort of quality loss of random blur isn't there with DLSS. So what we can do is we can get right down into the grass. If we go back to TAA. Yeah, nasty. 49 frames there as well. Let's pump on some super sampling and see how that grass looks then. So that's 2x super sampling. Oof. It almost looks like it's too sharp. You can see there's a bit of blur there from the TAA. Like there is objectively more detail, but the way it's coming through to the screen isn't great, and the TAA isn't handling that well. And let's try 4x super sampling. Oof. Yeah, just marginally worse in the grass actually. Because it looks like there's just extra pixel detail there, but it's not producing enough detail between those pixels, even with this internal sampling being high, to get rid of all the aliasing. And let's go over to DLSS. And there's still a bit of aliasing, there's still a bit of shimmering in the grass, but it looks way better, much higher frame rate. Really is NVIDIA's magic bullet. Okay, so what we're going to do is, it's going to go into a bit more of a built-up area. Oh, look at the detail on those bricks as well. No blur. My god, yes, that frame rate. My god. Wow. Still running smooth here. Alrighty, so here we are onwards. This is a level where generally the frame rate dips quite a bit and you get all sorts of weird shimmering and stuff with the foliage. So we're running about 86, 84 frames a second there with DLSS quality on. God, I've got to be careful this area because there's mines around here, I think, now. So yeah, pretty tree heavy. You can actually see the lower quality trees in the distance there, where it's the foliage is less dense and it's just kind of a more flat texture. But the DLSS is still handling that pretty well. So 90 frames here. Let's switch over to TAA. TAA is not too bad. You're still getting that bit of shimmering. Still doesn't look as clean. But the most important thing, of course, in this case, is the fact that we've lost 34, 35 frames a second. So as you can see, it's a bit nasty to play. This is one of the games where frame rate is really important. Do a quick image comparison back to quality DLSS, and then let's try 2x super sampling. So with 29 frames a second there, I still don't think it looks quite as good as DLSS does. And try 4x super sampling. I imagine we're gonna have 15 frames a second. It's gonna look marginally better than this. And there we go. Yeah, pretty much what I said. Back to DLSS quality. So overall, this is a really good move for the game. It certainly improves the image quality. Really gives a huge boost to FPS. So it's a win on both. Pretty much what I've come to expect from DLSS at this point. Very, very nice. I'm very excited to see what AMD's image reconstruction technology will look like. I think they're working on an ML version of that, as well as Intel's XESS. That'll be very interesting to see, and to see if that works on normal shaders and how well that works on normal shaders rather than dedicated hardware. But I think that just about wraps it up for now. To summarize, if you can, switch on DLSS in Tarkov because you can almost double your frame rate and get way better image quality. So there's no reason not to turn it on. Thanks for watching. Please do leave a like and a subscribe. Stick around for more videos. I'm hoping that Half-Life RTX comes out soon because I'd love to check that out. I hope you're staying safe, and I will see you in the next video.